has diabetes.
He's not drunk.
He has diabetes.
Ma'am, step back. He's intoxicated.
Look at his medical alert bracelet. Type 1 diabetic. It's right there. He needs sugar. These are glucose tablets. They'll save his life. No, it's glucose. He's diabetic. His blood sugar is 32.
Easy, sir. Hands behind your back.
A diabetic man attends a family festival. His blood sugar drops dangerously low. Hypoglycemia, a medical emergency. He starts stumbling, slurring his words, acting confused. The symptoms look identical to being drunk. But he's not drunk, he's dying. His wife knows immediately. She has the treatment, glucose tablets. They'll raise his blood sugar in 5 minutes. She tries to give them to him. A police officer stops her, calls glucose tablets drug paraphernalia. She shows the officer her husband's medical alert bracelet, stainless steel, red medical symbol, type 1 diabetic, on his wrist, clearly visible. The officer looks at it, dismisses it, could be fake. She begs, she screams, she explains. He has diabetes. His blood sugar is in the 30s. He's dying. The officers handcuff him instead, restrain him on the ground. His blood sugar drops to 32. He goes into diabetic coma, while handcuffed, while his wife has the treatment in her hand. This is Xavier Thomas, 34 years old, senior accountant, type 1 diabetic for 22 years, wears medical alert bracelet, carries glucose tablets, does everything right. He almost died because police couldn't tell the difference between drunk and diabetic. This will cost $13.6 million. It will expose how lack of medical emergency training turns diabetes into a crime. Subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below if you think diabetics shouldn't be arrested for having low blood sugar. Xavier Thomas was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at age 12. His immune system destroyed the cells in his pancreas that produce insulin. Without insulin, his body can't move glucose from bloodstream into cells for energy. The treatment is lifelong insulin replacement. Every day, multiple times a day, forever. For 22 years, Xavier has managed carefully. Wears insulin pump delivering steady insulin. Wears continuous glucose monitor checking blood sugar every 5 minutes. Counts carbs in everything. Adjusts insulin dozens of times daily. His control is excellent. 0 complications. Healthy. But even with perfect management, hypoglycemia happens. Low blood sugar. The most dangerous acute complication of type 1 diabetes. Hypoglycemia occurs when blood sugar drops too low, below 70. Too much insulin relative to available glucose. Maybe you exercise more than planned. Maybe insulin pump delivered too much. The symptoms progress in stages. Mild, shakiness, sweating, hunger. Moderate, confusion, slurred speech, unsteady walking. Severe, inability to eat or drink, seizures, loss of consciousness, coma, death. The symptoms of moderate to severe hypoglycemia are nearly identical to alcohol intoxication. Confusion, slurred speech, unsteady gait, strange behavior. To someone who doesn't know about diabetes, a person experiencing severe hypoglycemia looks drunk. Xavier has experienced hypoglycemia hundreds of times in 22 years. Mostly mild episodes, he treats himself with glucose tablets. Occasionally moderate episodes needing help. Twice severe episodes requiring emergency glucagon. He always wears his medical alert bracelet, stainless steel, red medical symbol, engraved, type 1 diabetic, insulin dependent, emergency contact number. He always carries glucose tablets, fast-acting sugar. Chew 3, wait 15 minutes, blood sugar rises. He always has emergency glucagon kit, hormone injection for severe hypoglycemia when he can't eat or drink. He does everything right. But on Saturday, October 21st, at a family festival, everything will go wrong. Saturday, October 21st, Riverside Community Fall Festival. Food trucks, live music, bounce houses, perfect autumn afternoon. Xavier, wife Jasmine, and 6-year-old daughter Kennedy arrived at 1 p.m. They'd had lunch. Xavier had calculated carbs and given insulin, or so he thought. By 2 p.m., they'd walked around an hour, more activity than planned. Exercise lowers blood sugar. His monitor alerted him at 1:55 p.m., Blood sugar 75, trending down. Xavier told Jasmine, "I'm going low, I need glucose." Jasmine pulled glucose tablets from her bag, handed him 3 tablets. 15 grams fast-acting glucose. Xavier chewed them. They sat on the bench, waited 15 minutes, but his blood sugar kept dropping. Monitor alarmed at 2:10 p.m. Blood sugar 62, still trending down. Unusual. 3 tablets should have stopped the drop. Something was wrong. Xavier took 3 more tablets. 30 grams total. Should definitely work. It didn't. At 2:15 p.m., monitor showed 54. Moderate hypoglycemia now. Hands shaking. Vision blurry. Thinking felt slow. Jasmine saw it. Xavier's eyes looked glazed, speech starting to slur. "We need to sit down. Stay here." But they were in a crowded festival. Music loud. Stimulation overwhelming as his brain struggled with low glucose. At 2:18 p.m., Xavier stood from the bench, felt dizzy, unsteady, reached out but missed, stumbled sideways. Jasmine grabbed his arm. "Xavier, sit down. You're going too low." But Xavier was confused now. Blood sugar 47, severe hypoglycemia. Brain wasn't getting enough glucose. Decision-making impaired, coordination impaired, speech impaired. He looked drunk. A woman 30 feet away saw Xavier stumble, saw him weaving, saw Kennedy crying. She called 911. "There's a drunk man at the Riverside Festival, stumbling around. Got a little girl with him." Officers Marcus Grant and Stephanie Weber responded immediately. Grant and Weber arrived at 2:23 p.m., saw Xavier stumbling, Jasmine holding his arm, Kennedy crying. Grant approached, saw classic intoxication signs, black male, unsteady gait, confused expression, slurred speech. "Sir, have you been drinking today?" Xavier tried to answer, but words came out wrong, slurred, confused. "No, I don't. My sugar." Blood sugar 43, could barely form sentences. Grant heard slurred speech, smelled Xavier's breath. No alcohol smell, but could be pills. Other drugs. "Sir, I need you to step over here." Xavier tried but stumbled. Blood sugar 43, could barely stand, brain starving for glucose. Jasmine stepped between Xavier and Grant. "Please, officer, he's not drunk. He has diabetes. His blood sugar is dangerously low. He needs sugar right now." Grant heard classic enabler excuse. "Medical condition. Sure. Ma'am, step back. We're handling this." Jasmine didn't step back, held up Xavier's wrist. "Look at his medical alert bracelet. It says type 1 diabetic. He's having a hypoglycemic episode." Grant glanced at bracelet, saw it. Stainless steel, red medical symbol. Type 1 diabetic. He'd heard of fake medical bracelets. People bought them to avoid DUI arrests. "Ma'am, step back. Your husband is under investigation for public intoxication." "He's not intoxicated. He has diabetes. His blood sugar is in the 30s. If you don't let me give him glucose, he's going into a coma." "Ma'am, this is your last warning. Step back or you'll be arrested." Jasmine pulled glucose tablets from her bag, held them up. "These are glucose tablets. They'll bring his blood sugar up in 5 minutes. Please let me give them to him." Grant saw tablets, small white tablets in orange bottle. Could be anything. Ecstasy, oxy, fentanyl. What are those? "Glucose, sugar, for diabetics. He needs them right now." "Put those down. That's drug paraphernalia." "What? No, these are medical supplies. Look at the label." Label said glucose tablets 4 grams each, but Grant had seen fake labels. "Put them down and step away from your husband." Jasmine started crying. "Please, you're killing him. Check his medical bracelet. His blood sugar is dropping. He's going to die." Grant nodded to Weber. "Get her back." Weber moved toward Jasmine. Jasmine backed away, still holding glucose, still screaming. "Check his bracelet. It's on his wrist. Type 1 diabetic, please." Xavier was barely conscious. Blood sugar 39, swaying, eyes glazed, couldn't respond, brain shutting down. Grant grabbed Xavier's arm. "Sir, you're under arrest for public intoxication." Xavier didn't resist, couldn't, didn't have brain function to understand. Grant turned Xavier around, pushed him against tree, started handcuffing. Jasmine screamed, "No, don't restrain him. He needs to lie down. He needs glucose. The bracelet is right there." Grant cuffed Xavier's hands behind back. Xavier slumped. Grant and Weber lowered him to ground. Xavier on his side now, handcuffed. Blood sugar, 36. Jasmine dropped to her knees next to him, showed medical bracelet to Grant. "Look, right here, type 1 diabetic. This is a medical emergency." Grant looked at bracelet with attention for first time. Read it. Type 1 diabetic, insulin dependent. Could be real, could be fake. Didn't change that the guy was publicly intoxicated. "Ma'am, your husband will be evaluated at the station. He doesn't have time. He needs glucose now. In 5 minutes he's going into a coma." Jasmine pulled out Xavier's emergency glucagon kit, red plastic case, clearly labeled Glucagon Emergency Kit for Severe Hypoglycemia. "This is emergency glucagon, hormone injection for severe low blood sugar. I'm trained to use it. Let me give it to him." Grant saw syringe, saw a vial of powder, mixing instructions. Looked like drug paraphernalia. "Put that down. You're not injecting him with anything. It's not drugs. It's glucagon, prescribed by his doctor. Look at the label." "Ma'am, put it down now or you're under arrest." Jasmine sobbing, "Please, he's dying. His blood sugar is in the 30s. Normal is 70 to 100. He's dying right now. Please let me save him. Step back from him, now." Weber pulled Jasmine away. Jasmine screaming, held back while Grant stood over Xavier. Kennedy crying, "Mommy, what's wrong with Daddy?" Xavier barely moving, blood sugar 34. At 2:28 p.m., Xavier's blood sugar hit 32. His brain no longer had enough glucose to maintain consciousness. Neurons literally ran out of fuel. He went limp, eyes rolled back, body slack. Jasmine saw it, screamed, "He's in a coma. Call 911. Get paramedics. He's dying." Grant checked pulse, still beating, still breathing, but unresponsive. Grant finally called for medical, 2:29 p.m. "Dispatch, we need paramedics at Riverside Festival. Subject unresponsive, possible overdose." "Not an overdose, diabetic coma. His blood sugar is 32. He needs IV glucose." Paramedics arrived 2:34 p.m., 5 minutes after Grant's call, 7 minutes after Xavier went into coma. Lead paramedic Michael Santos saw the scene immediately. Man on ground, handcuffed, unresponsive. Woman crying, holding glucose tablets and glucagon kit. Child screaming. Santos knelt next to Xavier. "What happened?" Jasmine answered, "He has type 1 diabetes, severe hypoglycemia. His blood sugar is in the 30s. I tried to give him glucose, but the officers wouldn't let me. He's been in a coma for 7 minutes. Santos looked at Grant. "You didn't let her give glucose to a diabetic having a hypoglycemic episode?" Grant started to explain. "We thought—" Santos cut him off. "Uncuff him, now." Weber removed handcuffs. Santos checked Xavier's blood sugar with glucometer. Finger stick, 3 seconds. Blood sugar, 32. Santos looked at his partner. "Severe hypoglycemia. We need IV glucose now." They started IV line, pushed 25 grams dextrose directly into Xavier's bloodstream. Within 60 seconds, Xavier's eyes fluttered. Within 90 seconds, conscious, confused, disoriented, but conscious. Jasmine collapsed with relief. "Thank God." Santos looked at her. "You said you tried to give him glucose?" "I had glucose tablets. I had glucagon. I told the officers he was diabetic. I showed them his medical alert bracelet. They wouldn't let me treat him." They called glucose tablets drug paraphernalia. Santos looked at Grant, expression pure disbelief. "You stopped a diabetic's wife from treating his hypoglycemia?" Grant had no answer. Santos turned back to Xavier, checked vitals. Blood sugar coming up. 58 now, still low but rising. We're transporting him to hospital for observation. Severe hypoglycemia can cause complications. They loaded Xavier onto stretcher. Jasmine and Kennedy rode in ambulance. Xavier was in hospital 6 hours. They monitored blood sugar, checked for complications, ran cognitive tests for brain damage from glucose deprivation. Lucky, no permanent damage. But close. Paramedics said another 5 minutes and he might have had seizures or irreversible brain injury. Hospital social worker documented everything. Officers' refusal to recognize medical emergency, prevention of treatment, diabetic coma in custody, near-death experience. Paramedic Santos filed report. Upon arrival, found patient in diabetic coma, blood sugar 32, handcuffed. Patient's wife stated she attempted to administer glucose tablets and was prevented by officers who identified medical supplies as drug paraphernalia. Patient's medical alert bracelet clearly visible, stating type 1 diabetic. This was a preventable near-death experience caused by officers' failure to recognize medical emergency and refusal to allow treatment. Xavier's family contacted attorney Rebecca Chen 2 days later. When she saw medical records, paramedic report, witness statements, she knew this was one of the most egregious cases she'd seen. 6 weeks later, she filed lawsuit against City Police Department, Officer Marcus Grant, Officer Stephanie Weber. Claims included failure to recognize medical emergency, ADA violation, denial of medical treatment, false arrest, deliberate indifference to serious medical needs, excessive force, endangerment, emotional distress, failure to train. Evidence was overwhelming. Photographs of Xavier's medical alert bracelet, stainless steel, red medical symbol, clear engraving, type 1 diabetic, insulin dependent. Hospital records showing blood sugar 32 upon paramedic arrival. 22 years of endocrinology records documenting type 1 diabetes. Prescriptions for insulin, glucose tablets, glucagon kit. Photos of glucose tablets clearly labeled glucose tablets 4 grams and glucagon kit clearly labeled glucagon emergency kit for severe hypoglycemia. Paramedic Santos's report documenting blood sugar 32, diabetic coma, wife prevented from giving glucose. Officers called glucose tablets drug paraphernalia. Medical alert bracelet visible and ignored. Preventable near-death experience. Body camera footage captured Jasmine repeatedly screaming, "He has diabetes," and "Check his bracelet." Jasmine holding up Xavier's wrist showing medical bracelet. Jasmine showing glucose tablets. Grant saying, "That's drug paraphernalia." Jasmine begging to give treatment. Xavier going into coma while handcuffed. Medical alert bracelet clearly visible multiple times. Witness statements from 12 festival attendees. All corroborated Jasmine's account. Several recorded video showing Jasmine screaming about diabetes while officers ignored her. Continuous glucose monitor data showing exact readings from 1:55 p.m. 75, dropping to 2:28 p.m. 32. Proved blood sugar dropped over 33 minutes while officers prevented treatment. Expert testimony from Dr. Patricia Reynolds, endocrinologist, explained blood sugar below 40 is life-threatening. That hypoglycemia symptoms are identical to intoxication to untrained observers. That immediate glucose administration is critical. That preventing treatment for 13 minutes nearly killed him. Expert testimony from paramedic chief Michael Rodriguez explained medical alert bracelets are industry-standard devices recognized by all first responders. That checking for medical alert bracelets is basic first aid 101. That glucose tablets are universally recognized medical supplies. That preventing family from administering glucose is dangerous and potentially lethal. Department training records showed 0 hours medical emergency recognition training, 0 hours on hypoglycemia versus intoxication, 0 hours on medical alert bracelet recognition, 0 hours on diabetes. Officer Grant's personnel file showed 3 prior complaints. Excessive force 2019, failure to provide medical assistance 2020, rough handling 2022. All dismissed. Pattern of dismissing medical needs. Xavier testified day 2. Described 22 years managing type 1 diabetes. Then, October 21st. I felt my blood sugar dropping. I took glucose tablets, but they weren't working fast enough. I started feeling confused. Speech got slurred. I was stumbling. Last thing I clearly remember is Jasmine trying to give me more glucose. Then police were there. Everything got hazy. I remember Jasmine screaming that I had diabetes. I remember being on the ground. Then nothing. Blackness. I woke up in an ambulance. The paramedic told me I'd been in a diabetic coma, that my blood sugar was 32, that I had almost died. I wear a medical alert bracelet for exactly this reason. So if I can't speak for myself, the bracelet speaks for me. It's on my wrist every day. It's visible. It says type 1 diabetic. The officers looked at it. Jasmine showed it to them, and they didn't believe it. They thought glucose tablets were drugs, and I almost died because they didn't know the difference between drunk and diabetic. Jasmine testified day 3. Her testimony was emotional. I've been with Xavier 10 years. I've seen hundreds of hypoglycemia episodes. I know exactly what they look like. I know how to treat them. When police arrived, I told them immediately, he has diabetes. His blood sugar is low. He needs glucose. They didn't listen. I showed them his medical alert bracelet, right there on his wrist, type 1 diabetic engraved. They looked at it. Officer Grant looked right at it, and he dismissed it, said it could be fake. I showed them glucose tablets, explained what they were, begged them to let me give Xavier just 2 tablets. That's all he needed. 30 seconds to chew, 5 minutes for blood sugar to start rising. Officer Grant called them drug paraphernalia. I pulled out emergency glucagon kit. Xavier was getting worse. Blood sugar in the 30s. I've been trained to use glucagon. It would have saved him. Officer Grant wouldn't let me give it. I was begging, crying, screaming that he was dying. Nothing worked. They thought I was covering for my drunk husband. And then Xavier went into a coma. Right there, handcuffed, while I had the treatment in my hand, and I couldn't give it to him. Voice broke. Those 7 minutes while we waited for paramedics were the worst minutes of my life. I didn't know if he was going to wake up. I didn't know if there would be brain damage. I didn't know if I was watching my husband die. All because the officers had never been trained to recognize the difference between drunk and diabetic. Paramedic Santos testified, day 4. When we arrived, Mr. Thomas was in diabetic coma. Blood sugar, 32. Dangerously, life-threateningly low. Normal is 70 to 100. Below 40 is medical emergency. 32 is critical. Mrs. Thomas told me she'd tried to give glucose tablets and officers prevented her. I couldn't believe it. Glucose tablets are basic first aid for diabetics. Every EMT, paramedic, first responder knows this. I looked at Mr. Thomas's wrist. Medical alert bracelet, clear as day. Type 1 diabetic. Whole purpose of those bracelets is to communicate medical information when patient can't. Officers had seen bracelet, had heard Mrs. Thomas explain diabetes repeatedly, had seen glucose tablets, and they still called it drunk and disorderly. If we'd arrived 5 minutes later, Mr. Thomas might have had seizures or permanent brain damage. Another 10 minutes and he could have died. Completely preventable near-death experience. Cross-examination of Officer Grant was devastating. Officer Grant, did you see Mr. Thomas's medical alert bracelet? Yes. What did it say? Type 1 diabetic. Did you know what type 1 diabetes is? Not really, no. Have you received training on diabetes? No. On hypoglycemia? Number. On how to tell the difference between someone drunk and someone having medical emergency. Number. Mrs. Thomas told you her husband had diabetes and needed glucose. What did you think? I thought she was making excuses for him being drunk. She showed you glucose tablets, clearly labeled. What did you think they were? Could have been drugs. Did you look at the label? Briefly. What did the label say? Glucose tablets, 4 grams each. And you still thought they were drugs? People fake labels. So when a wife is desperately trying to give medical treatment, showing you medical supplies, showing you medical alert bracelet, explaining medical emergency, You assumed she was lying? In my experience, people make excuses. Before October 21st, did you know that low blood sugar could make someone appear drunk? No. Mr. Thomas went into diabetic coma while in your custody. How did that make you feel? I didn't want that to happen. But it did happen. Because you prevented his wife from giving him glucose. Because you didn't recognize medical emergency. Because you assumed drunk instead of diabetic, correct? I made a mistake that nearly killed a man. Grant had no response. Jury deliberated 5 hours, liable on all counts. 16 months after incident, settlement reached $13.6 million. $5.1 million to Xavier for false arrest, denial of medical treatment, deliberate indifference, endangerment, emotional distress. $8.5 million punitive damages against Department, Grant, and Weber. Officer Marcus Grant terminated for cause, barred from law enforcement in state. Personally liable $400,000. 3 prior complaints reopened, all found meritorious. Officer Stephanie Weber suspended 180 days without pay, demoted. Required 300 hours medical emergency training. DOJ opened investigation. Found systemic failures, 0 medical emergency training. No protocols for recognizing medical conditions versus intoxication. DOJ consent decree mandated reforms. All officers required 80 hours mandatory medical emergency training. Training included recognizing hypoglycemia versus intoxication, medical alert bracelet recognition, diabetes and other medical conditions, when to call paramedics instead of arresting. New protocols. Officers must check for medical alert bracelets before assuming intoxication. Any person showing signs of possible medical emergency must be evaluated by paramedics before arrest. State lawmakers passed Medical Emergency Recognition Act, requiring all law enforcement officers complete medical emergency training as basic certification. Xavier testified before state legislature, showed body camera footage, showed medical alert bracelet. Bill passed with bipartisan support. Named Xavier Thomas Medical Emergency Recognition Act. 6 months after settlement, Xavier recovered physically, but carries psychological scars. No permanent damage from diabetic coma. Brain function normal. Diabetes management unchanged. But he has PTSD, panic attacks when he sees police, anxiety about experiencing hypoglycemia in public, fear of not being believed during medical emergencies. Used settlement to establish Thomas Foundation for Medical Emergency Awareness. Provides free medical alert bracelets to people who can't afford them. Funds medical emergency training for first responders. Creates educational materials for law enforcement about diabetes and other medical conditions. Foundation has distributed 15,000 free medical alert bracelets. Trained officers at 47 police departments. Xavier became police trainer. Travels to departments teaching medical emergency recognition. Shows body camera footage. Demonstrates symptoms of hypoglycemia. Explains how to recognize medical alert bracelets. Most common question, how do we tell the difference between drunk and diabetic? Xavier's answer, you check for medical alert bracelets. You ask if the person has medical conditions. You call paramedics when in doubt. You listen when family says it's medical emergency. You don't assume intoxication just because someone is stumbling and confused. And you get training. Because this training saves lives. When speaking publicly, honest about ongoing impact. Physical recovery was complete within hours. Psychological recovery continues. Nightmares about dying while handcuffed. Fear during every hypoglycemia episode. His message focuses on prevention. I almost died because officers didn't know the difference between drunk and diabetic. That's not their fault. They were never trained. But it is the department's fault for sending officers into the field without medical emergency training. This was preventable, every bit of it. Officer Grant's deposition became court record. I didn't know what type 1 diabetes was. I'd never been trained on hypoglycemia. I didn't know low blood sugar could look like being drunk. I didn't know glucose tablets were medical supplies. I thought the medical alert bracelet might be fake. If I had known, I would have called paramedics immediately. I would have let Mrs. Thomas give him glucose, but I didn't know, and I'd never been trained. Asked what he'd say to Xavier? I'm sorry. I'm sorry I didn't recognize you were having medical emergency. I'm sorry I prevented your wife from treating you. I'm sorry you went into a coma. I'm sorry you almost died. I wish I'd had the training. Xavier watched the deposition. When asked if he accepted the apology, I believe he's sorry. But being sorry doesn't change what happened. The real apology isn't words, it's change. Training. Policy. Making sure no other diabetic almost dies because officers can't tell the difference. Officer Weber completed suspension and training, became department's medical emergency liaison officer, trains every new recruit on medical conditions, medical alert devices, when to call paramedics. In recent interview, when I saw Mr. Thomas stumbling and slurring, I assumed intoxication. When his wife showed medical bracelet, I assumed it might be fake. I had zero training in medical emergencies. None of us did. And a man almost died because of our ignorance. Jasmine Thomas advocates alongside Xavier, speaks at medical conferences about family members' role in emergencies. Department now has 6 officers trained as medical emergency response officers. Partnerships with local endocrinology clinics and diabetes advocacy groups. Quarterly training refreshers. National Diabetes Association used Xavier's case to push for federal legislation requiring medical emergency training for all federally funded law enforcement. I've lived with type 1 diabetes for 22 years. I know how to manage it. I wear medical alert jewelry. I carry emergency supplies. I do everything right. But on October 21st, none of that mattered, because the officers who responded didn't know what type 1 diabetes was, didn't know what hypoglycemia looks like, didn't know that medical alert bracelets are real medical devices, didn't know that glucose tablets are life-saving medicine, not drugs. My medical alert bracelet was on my wrist. Visible, clear, engraved, type 1 diabetic. The whole purpose of that bracelet is to communicate my medical condition when I can't. The officers looked at it. Jasmine showed it to them, and they dismissed it. My wife had glucose tablets. She was trying to give them to me. 30 seconds and I could have chewed them. 5 minutes and my blood sugar would have started rising. The officers called them drug paraphernalia. She had emergency glucagon, prescribed by my endocrinologist. She's trained to use it. It would have saved my life. The officers wouldn't let her give it, and I went into diabetic coma while handcuffed, while my wife had the treatment in her hand, while she screamed that I was dying, while my 6-year-old daughter cried for her daddy. The 13.6 million matters. The training matters. But what matters most is what this case exposed: the gap between medical reality and law enforcement knowledge. Diabetes affects 37 million Americans. Type 1 diabetes affects nearly 2 million. We all wear medical alert bracelets. We all carry glucose. We all manage a condition that can look like intoxication when it goes wrong. And before October 21st, officers in this city had zero training to recognize it. Zero training to tell the difference between drunk and diabetic. Zero training on medical alert bracelets. Zero training on glucose tablets. Zero training on when to call paramedics instead of making an arrest. That's not the officer's fault. They can't know what they've never been taught. But it is the department's fault for sending them into the field without that knowledge. The body camera footage has been viewed by thousands of officers in training. They see my medical alert bracelet. They see Jasmine showing glucose tablets. They see her explaining diabetes. They see me going into coma. They see what happens when officers don't have medical emergency training. And they understand this could have been prevented. With training, with knowledge, with protocols, with willingness to listen when a spouse says, "This is a medical emergency." The Thomas Foundation works to change that. We fund training. We distribute free medical alert bracelets. We educate first responders. We advocate for legislation. Because I survived, but the next diabetic having hypoglycemia in public might not. The next person with epilepsy having seizure might not. The next person with autism having meltdown might not. Medical conditions are not crimes. Medical emergencies are not intoxication. Medical alert bracelets are not fake. Glucose tablets are not drugs. It's time law enforcement learned to recognize the difference. Lives depend on it. Thank you for watching. I will see you in the next story.